hopefully you can hear me all right. I'm definitely switched on, so hopefully all is well, and we are good to go for live. Welcome Friday! Friday! Hooray! If you're particularly observant, you may notice something different about me, for I have new glasses, which I'm quite pleased with. I've got some rather cool sunglasses, but I'm not going to embarrass myself by wearing them on camera. So today I've got a few things to talk about today, which I hope you guys, my audience, are going to find interesting. The first and the main and the sort of the big thing, which I'm going to talk about, and then we'll see how much time we've got left after it, is this book here, Polyversal, from Collins Epic Wargaming and author Ken Whitehurst. Now, Polyversal has had an interesting development cycle, and I want to talk about that briefly before I look at the game itself. So I first heard about Polyversal towards the end of 2015 when I was just finalising talking with Osprey Games about Horizon Wars, and we'd put the manuscript to bed and we were just finalising the layout and forgetting to include the cover rules. And so when I heard about Polyversal coming out, I felt a little bit nervous. This is the first time that I've been publishing a game, and you can get quite protective of your genre, your field, your area. I was writing a 6mm-ish sci-fi combined arms battle game, and here was Polyversal muscling in on what I felt like was my territory. But Ken, I don't know Ken personally, but he and I have communicated over the years. Other side of the Atlantic, and he's been working on he had been working on Polyversal for a long time before I even heard of it. I heard of it because he was taking Polyversal out into the community, and he was going out to the events in the States, laying it out on the table, showing off how it worked and what it could do, and trying to drum up some interest with a view to running a Kickstarter to make it happen. And he attracted the attention of Collins Epic Wargames, and they came to him and said, "We love what you're doing, let us help you take it to Kickstarter and turn this into a real thing." And they had some big ideas, and they had some big ambitions, and they did something else which I was absolutely 100% on board on, that they didn't develop their own miniatures line. Collins wanted a game in a box. So you buy a box, and in that would have the rules and all the counters and the hexes and all the miniatures, maybe even some terrain, but I don't think they ever sort of put that into the concept, and all the miniatures you needed to play. But rather than make their own miniatures, they made the very, very interesting decision to go out to existing manufacturers of miniatures, and not just one, but a range of different manufacturers, and say, would you be interested in collaborating with us so that we would buy stock of your miniatures and put them into our game? And among those were Plasma Blast Games, was Brigade Models, well known to fans of Horizon Wars, was then new kid on the block Hawk Wargames with their Drop Zone Commander range. Now that was really interesting to me, that Hawk Wargames, who had their own 10mm sci-fi battle game, were willing to talk about licensing their miniatures to appear in the box for a completely different game. And I was fascinated by that decision then. So perhaps looking back now that we know that Hawk Wargames was struggling to shift stock and make ends meet, and was about to go under and sell their intellectual property to TT Combat, that we can see the first signs of that in their willingness, apparently so easy, to allow their miniatures to be repurposed to another game. Anyway, that happened. They went to Kickstarter. They ran a Kickstarter in May 2016, shortly, literally a month after Horizon Wars dropped. And I didn't back the Kickstarter. I definitely thought about it, but one of the reasons I wrote Horizon Wars was because I was really quite short on money, and I didn't have the money to be throwing at somebody else's game at the time. So Polyversal met its funding target on Kickstarter, and since then the campaign has been... It would be wrong to say it's been a troubled campaign. They fulfilled the miniatures. Took them a while to fulfill all of the miniatures, for all kinds of reasons. And I know Brigade Models, that was one of the contributors, Tony Francis at Brigade, I think did mention to me that he had to dedicate a lot of casting time, because it's just Tony in his shed. He had to dedicate a lot of casting time to fulfill the size of demand for the Polyversal sets. So it did take a while to fulfill, but that wasn't anything on Collins, wasn't anything on Ken. It just took a while to fulfill the miniatures. They also fulfilled the dice, and Polyversal uses a special dice system, which I will show you in a moment. But they are yet to fulfill the big idea of a 6mm sci-fi game in a box. There is no box. There are no card tokens. There are no card army building hexes, which we'll talk about. There was no hard copy rulebook until January this year. So January 2021, a print-on-demand edition of Polyversal finally became available, and is now available through Wargame Vault. I can't remember how much it is. I bought a copy, but I had a discount code, so I can't remember what the total cost was. But it's out there. And, you know, the backers of the Kickstarter, obviously, I think are feeling like their hopes weren't met. But that's the nature of Kickstarter. You know, it's not... You know, Collins had a plan, and Ken was happy to go along with that. And the Kickstarter was to try to achieve that, and he didn't achieve it. That's okay. But we do have a book. We have a hard copy physical book. It's paperback. It is printed by Lightning Source in the UK. I don't know who does the printing for Wargame Vault in the United States. It's available from Wargame Vault. Just search Polyversal. Oh, thank you, Dale. Dale has checked in to let me know that my sound is definitely working. I'm not talking to myself. I assumed it was because I'd had 3 people join and nobody left. So that's always a good sign that my sound is working. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look through the Polyversal book. We're going to have a quick look at their dice mechanics in particular. I would love to look at the army builder mechanics. But to do that, I will have to print off the hexes and stick them to card myself. And because I want to design my own hexes for miniatures I already own, I have to design each hex individually. So we're not going to get to do that, maybe another time, but we will look at them briefly in the rulebook, so you'll see what they look like. Okay, so as you can see, it's quite a hefty piece of work. It clocks in at 171 pages long, only 7 pages of which are setting. Everything else is rules. So this is a hefty, crunchy piece of rules writing. There's a lot in here to take in. That's the first thing I would say, is if you are looking for a game that you can just pick up, get your head around and throw down on the table quickly, don't go for this one. This is a game that you're going to want to sit up with in bed with a mug of cocoa, or sit in your leather armchair with a double shot of decent scotch and mull over it at length. Yep. This is a crunchy game. So let's have a look through what we've got on the inside. Nice long list of Kickstarter backers, which is a good thing to recognise. Some familiar names in here. Might even have some viewers that names appear on here, but all the Kickstarter backers are there. We've got a good detailed contents page, double page for contents with all the subcategories inside it. There's a little bit of a printing error on this page. It's the only page that this happened on, but the print cutting has not been perfect on this page, but I wouldn't die in a ditch over it. And then that's the end of the contents. And we'll get to the rest in a moment, but it is worth noting that there is no index. So there is a contents page, and it's a very detailed contents page, but it doesn't have an index. And I've got to say, when I worked with Osprey, I told them I thought Horizon Wars should have an index, and they said, no, I don't think it needs an index. I think they were wrong. Zero Dark has an index, Op Nemesis has an index, Infinite Dark has an index. This book should definitely have an index. It's big and it is complex. So, you know, to run without an index, in my opinion, was a bad idea. We'll take a brief pause to have a look at the comments in the Facebook page. Thank you. We can leave if it makes you more comfortable talking to yourself. I've just finished recording my podcast for the week, so I spend more than enough time talking to myself. I was listening to your Patreon podcast when this started. Double Roby. Oh, well done, John. And from Jonathan, I've also got a parcel for you sitting by my front door, which will be going to the shop as soon as I finish with the live stream today. Okay? Is that a Roby load? A Roby load, yeah, you could easily get a Roby load every Friday if you are a patron, because you could listen to my podcast on the Friday and then catch into the live stream. Or you could have a Roby sandwich. You could start your weekend with the Roby live stream, and then you could finish it on Monday with the podcast, which drops at 12 o'clock on Monday. So, Roby sandwich or Roby load, entirely up to you. Right, back to the book. One thing which I'll draw out straight away is QR codes. Not that hand, that hand. Okay, QR codes appear throughout the book. And I'm in a mixed opinion about this. So these are QR codes you can scan, and it will take you to a video explaining more about the rules. I love videos that explain rules. I think that's a great thing. I am struggling to make them for my own games. I'm doing okay on Zero Dark. I'm trying to put them together for Infinite Dark. Videos that explain your games are great. QR codes in your rulebook that link to those videos. The nature of the internet is it changes so frequently, and a book is forever, and the internet is nebulous and fluid. I would not be comfortable putting QR codes in my rulebook for fear that the domain name that this belongs to eventually is going to disappear, and it might get picked up by somebody unscrupulous. And yeah, it just makes me feel uncomfortable. I like it in a way because it really taps into the sci-fi thematic quality of the book, but as a publisher it kind of gives me little doubtful twinges. Another thing here that they have, so they've got their standard thing is a justified column, which is good publishing discipline, and then they have these tip sections throughout the book, and these are not justified, they are left justified, and they're given this kind of highlighting look. I'm not a fan, is the short answer to that. Not a fan of that approach. That said, I'm just being super critical here. The layout is very nice, it's very professional. This coloured border changes between different sections of the book, so it does make it a lot easier to search for the section that you're after. There is a storyline. If you like Horizon Wars storyline, this is kind of like it, but maybe with less of a sense of humour. It's quite a serious sort of environmental collapse storyline, without being preachy, it has to be said. It's a good piece of science fiction crunch. I think politically it is perhaps a little naive, but it's fun. It's a good setting, totally unnecessary to the game, and they don't mess around. It stops there. That's it. That's all the fluff you get in this book. Everything else, crunch. Right, nice bit of art. There's not a lot of art in this book, and I think that's another weakness, that they've got these lovely splash pages of art at the beginning of each section, and that is basically it. Okay, so that's the art. And you get the art that's on the cards and stuff, but for showy art, this is all we've got. The art is expensive. I absolutely, believe me, I know so well how expensive it is to put good art in your... My dog is at the door again. We'll let him in. Yeah. Go on your bed. Go on your bed. There we go. Right, the dog is here. I know how expensive it is to get good art in your book. I feel like if you're going to run a Kickstarter, you could probably afford to splash out more on art. That's my feeling. Just saying. Right, okay. We've got a whole section on notes at the start, which is great. We've got some nice photography. It's good illustration, actually. The photography is a real mixed bag, and we'll talk about that as we go through. There's lots of photographs of miniatures. Most of these miniatures are included in the box, or as the box is supposed to be, which is good. We've got a lot of explanation of the dice. The dice are colour-coded, And it's called Polyversal because it uses polyhedral dice and a selection from D4 up to D12. We all love a D12 on this live stream. D4, D6, D8, D10 and D12. D10, take it or leave it. But okay, it's a selection of polyhedrals. I have got a selection of polyhedral dice to show you the mechanics later. These are not correctly color-coded. According to the game would ship with a blue D4, green D6, yellow D8, orange D10 and a red D12. They don't have to be that colour, but it is really helpful if they are, because the game works hard on using that stuff. Yep. Okay, and then tiles. Right. Because I can't show you these mechanically, let's talk about the tiles, because this is how you make your army list. So here we've got a circle of 7 tiles, a central hex, and then 6 hexes around it. Each hex represents a unit. The center hex is the command unit, so it always has the command type. And then these other hexes are in the battle group belonging to this command unit. Now this works well in a lot of ways. First of all, you use this like a console. So whatever state your unit is in, how much stress it has taken, whatever psychological profile it has, whatever orders it's been given, they go on the command console. They don't go on the tabletop. Now I like that because it keeps counters off the tabletop. That said, and this is much smaller than it would be in real life. It would the actual hexes. I mean, they're not twice this size, but it's laid out. It's like this thick, okay? Because you can't read these so well. They've got to be larger to be legible. In fact, is that one? That one's about the right size. So you can see that's the size that actually one hex is there. So you can see this hex laid out is going to be bigger than this. It's going to be at least as big as this page. So one of these hexes is taking up quite a lot of space. And you play this game on, they recommend a 4 foot by 6 foot table. And you're basically taking up 1 square foot of it with your command console. Or you've got to have a side table to put the command console on. So, many things I love about this idea. Hexes are always the future. You see hexagons, you know it's the future. Love hexagons. The fact that you can create your own using a tool on their website, the Polyversal Arsenal, terrific. I mean, it's so crunchy, and we'll see that at the end. There's so much detail involved in building these units. And during the game, they can come in and out of command radius. And if they're out of command radius, you push the hex away, and it slides out from the battle group. So you can see it's part of the battle group, but you can see it's not connected with the battle group. But heaven help you if somebody jogs your table or your side table or wherever you've got it, because they'll be all over the place. And if you've got more than one battle group, I mean, this is just 7 units, and this game is really optimized, I think, for minimum company plus. I mean, ideally, you're going to be wanting to play this at brigade level, brigade plus level, to get the most out of this game. And that's going to be like 3 of these. That's a lot of space and a lot of hexes to manage. And we'll come back to this in my conclusions. But this is fundamental to the game. This is a core, unique function of the game. You cannot play Polyversal as a game without buying into this system. There's no alternative. Yeah. Okay. It's got lots of counters. Lots of counters in the game. So you've got the orders counters. Okay, lots of different options for orders. Anybody who played Space Marine, the original Games Workshop 6mm battle game that followed Adeptus Titanicus, the first version, will be familiar with orders counters. Very like this, but there are more of them. Yep. Then there are these counters as well. So we've got psychological profiles that go on your command console. We've got the unit identifier pairs. So that's if you've got 2 of the same type of unit in a battle group, you need to identify which is which. You've got an effectiveness indicator that goes on the command console, and we'll come back to that. You've got a stress level, and that's not at the start of the game, but as units experience things in the game, they suffer stress, and you add stress counters. Then you've got the combatant damage effectiveness counters. So these are the damage counters. So as you take damage in warfare, so these counters go onto the console as well. as you can see, there's a lot of counters involved. There's a lot of information going down on the console, and you've got to constantly refer from the console to the tabletop to make sure you understand the state that any given unit is in. Should be said that a unit doesn't have to consist of a single element. It's not like Horizon Wars, where one element is one unit. In this game, a unit can consist of a varying number of elements, and the unit hex will say what the range is. And obviously each one has its own points cost. Okay, then I won't go through the detail, the game in detail, except to look at broadly the structure of a turn. So first thing to notice is that the border has changed colour in this section, so you can see we're in a different section. Other thing I was going to point out was the photography. Everything else about this book is quite slick. It's quite professional. There are formatting decisions that I would question, that maybe already look a little bit dated, like 5-6 years on from when this was made. But you know, speaking as somebody who's tried to learn how to format high-end wargaming books like this from scratch, I am broadly, if I had produced this book, I'd be really impressed with how it looked, except for the photography. First of all, the photographer, which I think is Ken, his tabletops have always used what I call the cat litter approach, which is when you lay out the tabletop and then you sort of scatter sand and gravel, quite coarse sand and gravel, all over it to give it that kind of broken, rubbly look. It is my opinion that it does not work to create a broken, rubbly look, that it is distracting and it makes an enormous mess, and it adds nothing aesthetically to the tabletop. I think we need a nice, clean, clear tabletop, and we allow the player's imagination to add the rubble. I think that is important. You can add rubble as a fixed piece of terrain, as something you've actually made to be rubble, but this approach, I'm not a fan. Now, these buildings are amazing. They're by, what are they called, the Phalanx Consortium. These buildings are fabulous. I'm pretty sure not only were they designed and printed by the Phalanx Consortium, I think they were painted by them as well. Because, sorry to Ken, again, I think all the miniatures that appear in the book are Ken's miniatures. And Ken is a wonderful author and a wonderful writer, and he's written a great book. He's not a terrific miniatures painter. He is a strictly adequate tabletop painter. So if you want miniatures that look achievable, he's got you down pat. But I don't think it does the game any favours to be illustrated with miniatures that are only adequate. I think the game would have looked more interesting if the miniatures had been better painted, and the lighting is extremely basic. I mean, you can see here that we've got long black shadows in the background of this photograph. Whether that was from a flash or whether this was taken in daylight, I don't know, but this is not by any stretch of the imagination a professional level of photography. Again, I think that's a shame. I think it makes the game look cheap when everything else about it looks slick and professional, and I think it's a mistake, in my opinion. Right, let's get to the game itself. So the structure of a game of Polyversal is really interesting, and I want to go and say innovative. I don't think it's true to say everything in it is truly innovative, but I think Ken knows wargames. I mean, to an extent, from reading this book and having sort of followed him for a few years on social media and had a few very pleasant exchanges with him, I think he knows wargames better than I do. I think his exposure to a wide range of different approaches to wargames and the replication of different tactical and strategic ideas is much wider than mine. And he's taken some really interesting ingredients from a wide variety of games, and he's mixed them up in a very new, very, very crunchy way. So the structure of a turn in Polyversal is that each player, let's assume 2 players. It does claim that you can play it with 3 or more players. I think it's optimized at 2. Each player rolls for initiative, and that's influenced by the command unit that they're rolling for. And if you've got more than one command unit, you pick a command unit to roll for their initiative against your opponent. If you win, the amount by which you have won tells you how many units in your battle group you can now activate. And when you've finished activating those, you then roll for initiative again. And if you win, you can activate some more. Now, if you've activated all the units in your battle group, you pass. But that's not the end. You pass a turn, it doesn't pass your opponent, you then roll again. And only once, and I may have some of this wrong, but as far as I can tell it, only once both players have had the opportunity to pass and have chosen to pass, or everybody's units are activated, is a turn over. Now, it's the part of the book that's least well written, in my opinion, because it is very different. Certainly to my mind, it's a very original, very innovative way of doing it. I can see a lot of narrative byplay in this, and there's a lot of tactics involved in manipulating the odds of who is going to win any given command test, involving different unit types and EWS and jamming and stress and effectiveness, and it all comes into play. And it's very, very clever. It's very meshed. It's very crunchy. And I think that section of the rules, which is one of the first parts of the rule book, could have been better written to really explain how it works. Because it feels to me like it's possible that you could have two players that are constantly making command and initiative checks, and one player's just never winning. They're just never, and it takes ages to get to the end of the turn, because this guy's only, and if he does win, he only wins by one. So he's activating one unit. And then the other guy wins and he activates all the rest. Or he wins and he's activated all of his, so he just goes, no, pass, it's your turn. But it's not clear whether that person has to win a roll before they can activate any units, or whether they just automatically can activate whatever they want. Now, there is a thing for if you both pass and there are units that you've not yet activated, or if there are units that are out of command radius that you're not allowed to activate. And then they have their own different way of activating that is based upon their effectiveness scale and sort of works down on a hierarchy level. Grokking the core of the activation system and this initiative system is absolutely at the heart of the game. And the fact that, having read it maybe a dozen times now, I still haven't quite visualized in my head how it works, is indicative that maybe it's an area of the game that could do with some polishing. I'm sure it works. I'm sure it's brilliant. And if Ken were here and could explain it to me, I'd go, oh, right, well, I understand that now. I'm sure that's the case. But I think the writing of it could possibly do with a little bit of polishing. Let me just take a brief pause to have a look at the comments. What have we got? Robert Fellows agrees about the internet and the QR codes. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad it's not just me. I love the sort of the futurism feeling of it, but it just feels dangerous. Dice like Star Grant with different dice, different troop qualities, or just different things? From Peter. Good question, Peter. Yes, like Star Grant, also a little bit like Tomorrow's War, but at the same time different. So it's not like a unit has a dice that indicates its troop quality. It has different dice depending on its different capabilities and its effectiveness. So let's have a look at the dice mechanics now. So I'm just going to move the camera so that you can see my dice tray. I hope this is going to work. So leave your and down. Whoops. And knock over that. And we can see my dice tray. There we go. Nice Precinct Omega dice tray. This is sadly not yet for sale, so don't ask. But I would, in fact, do ask, because if you'd like a Precinct Omega dice tray, tell me. If enough people want one, I will get them produced en masse and put them up on the website. Right, okay, so let's do shooting. There are lots of mechanics in the game, but shooting is the one that everybody is interested in when it comes to sci-fi miniature war games. So you roll 3 dice for a hit test. First thing is your target has to be in range. I think the game has absolute range, which, as you know, I'm not a fan of. But we'll glance over that. So the first thing is you want to know what's the targeting quality of your dice. Let's say that my unit has a targeting quality of 6. The next question is, so that's how good are they at shooting. The next thing is, what's the effectiveness of my unit? And the effectiveness is a quality that you set in the army building phase, and basically it's how elite is my unit. Are they bog standard, scraped them off out of the drunk tank conscripts, D4, or are they elite special forces operators, D12? Yep. So let's say we've got a targeting of 6 and they're an effectiveness of D8. Okay, so they've got a strong effectiveness. And then last of all, you look at the weapon that they're actually firing. And in this case, let's just say that they're just firing their infantry weapons. So it's only a D4. Yep. So now we are going to roll these 3 dice. And I've got a 2, a 4, and a 2. That's actually a really useful result to illustrate some stuff here. Okay, so we've got a 2, a 4, and a 2. So the total result is 8. So the first thing we do is we add them up, 8, and we compare it to the evasion stat of the target. If the evasion stat of the target is 8 or more, I have missed. If, on the other hand, it is 7 or less, I have hit. Okay, let's suppose that the evasion stat of my target is 6. So I've hit. Good start. The next question I have to ask is, looking at my weapon, which was, as we said, a D4 power, now, is my weapon, has it got a low damage, medium low damage, medium high damage, or high damage quality? And let's ignore medium low and medium high for a second. If it's got a low damage quality, I look at the lowest dice I have rolled, which is a 2. So I will have done 2 damage. If I've got the high damage quality, I'll look at the highest dice I've rolled, which is a 4. So it will do 4 damage. If I have rolled 2 dice the same, which I have, then I might be able to add them together. If I've got a low power and the 2 lowest dice, the 4 and the 6, the D4 and the D6, are the same, I can add them together, but they're not. Okay? If I've got a high power dice, a high power weapon, and the 2 higher dice, the D6 and the D8, are the same, I can add those together, which they are. So rather than 2 damage, I would get 4 damage, which is what I already scored at the high power, so it makes no difference in this case. But if they were both 3, I'd get 6 damage, which would be better. Now let's get to medium. Okay. So if you've got a medium low or medium high, and all of your dice are different, you take the dice with the middle value. 2 in this case. If you've got medium low, and your 2 lower dice are the same, you can add them together. If you've got medium high and your 2 higher dice are the same, you can add them together for damage. Now, that is, first of all, the book explains that really well, in detail, with many examples, and I grokked it on the first read through. Second, it takes a lot of words to explain that. But once you are rolling dice, it becomes really easy to look at. So here I've got a 4, an 8 and a 6. I've got 18. That is that more than their evasion? Yes, great, I've hit. I've got a 4, a 6 and an 8. I've got a high power, I've caused 8 damage. I've got a low power, I've caused 4 damage. I've got a medium power, I've caused 6 damage. Yeah? Or if I've got a medium high, where's 8? There we go. I've got a medium high, I've caused 16 damage. Fantastic. Okay? Or I've got a high power, I've caused 16 damage. So it is actually very straightforward. 16, 18, 2, 6, 10 immediately tells you low, medium, high. Yeah? So the dice mechanics in Polyversal, they're great. Now, the colour coding thing comes into play on the hexes. I'll move that back. You don't need to see the dice anymore. You can put up with looking at me again. Right. Oh, where are you? There we are. So the dice mechanics are great. They're complicated to explain. They take a lot of words, a lot of examples, but they're really clearly explained. And as I think I've just shown very quickly, very intuitive. Now, if you've listened to my podcast where I was talking a few weeks ago about ranged combat, you know I don't like absolute range, and that does seem to be a thing in this game. I should say I have not put this game on the table. You know, this is purely from a read-through of the rules. That's the basic dice mechanics. That's the basic turn system, albeit the turn system I still haven't quite got my head around. Let's have a look then at army creation. Army creation is a big part of the game. It's that much of the rules. Okay, combatant design, he calls it here. Because well, that's true actually. Army creation is a piece of cake. It's the hex thing. You take your hexes, you pick your command unit, and you organise your battle group around it. It's incredibly simple, incredibly quick, once you've got your hexes. These rules are all about creating your own hexes. Now, the idea with the box game was that the box would come with a whole load of pre-made hexes for the miniatures in the box. And those hexes exist. They are not physical hexes that you can just pick out of a box. They are digital files that you will get when you buy this book on Wargame Vault, or if you backed it on Kickstarter, you should already have them. You've got to print them out, stick them on card, and they're double-sided because there's stuff on the back as well, which isn't relevant for most gameplay uses. But you do have to stick it together and make it yourself if you want to work with the miniatures that came in the box, or that didn't exist, or you want to buy those specific miniatures, or you already own those miniatures. Great, you can use those hexes. If, like me, you want to pull the miniatures you've already got in your display case out and use those, and they're not part of the miniatures that were in the box, you're going to have to make your own hexes. All the rules to explain it are here. You don't need these rules, though. Okay, I have already designed multiple hexes, and I've just realised I am not plugged into my power, and my laptop's about to run out. Ah, dear. Poor planning on my part. Okay, there we go. I'm back in. Okay, so there is a tool called the Arsenal, which is run on the Polyversal website. I think it's arsenal.polyversal.com, but don't quote me on that. You do have to sign up to use it, so it's not quite like Infinity Army that you can use it without giving them your details. At least you used to be able to do that with Infinity Army. But if you don't want to use the Arsenal, or you really want to get into the weeds, you'll want to read these rules, because the Arsenal it gives you all of the tools to make your hexes, but without reading these rules, you may not fully understand the implications of all of your choices. Okay, so what type of weapon you add, whether it's got anti-aircraft only, whether it can also do anti-aircraft as well as anti-ground, whether you're tracked or wheeled or hover. Okay, it's all explained in here. This is the differences between each of those types. This is where the majority of the crunch lies. And you can see here, as I was talking about the photography not doing them any favours in particular. Now, all these miniatures are lovely miniatures. They're beautiful miniatures. These are perfectly adequately painted. And you know, I'm not here trying to say that Ken, or I'm pretty sure it was Ken who painted these. I'm not trying to say that, you know, Ken can't paint and he shouldn't be allowed to put his miniatures in public. I'm just saying that I think these miniatures would have sold the game better if they'd got a professional to paint them. And even more so if they'd got a professional to paint them and to photograph them. Or even had just invested in a reasonable photographic lighting rig. Yeah, when I was doing my photographs for Horizon Wars, I borrowed my brother-in-law's camera and his lighting cube. When I was doing the photography for Zero Dark, I had upgraded my phone and I had a really, really good camera phone, and it did everything I needed to. But I still put a lot of time into making sure that the lighting was good so that there weren't too many inappropriate shadows. And it's still a pretty amateurish affair, I'd be the first to admit. The photography in Zero Dark is fairly amateur. It's better in Op Nemesis. It's better again in Infinite Dark because I'm getting better at it. Okay, but I'm not a professional and I don't have Kickstarter money behind me to develop my games. These guys did. They could have built in a budget to get professionally painted miniatures and professional photography. Just saying. Anyway, there's a lot of crunch in here, and it feeds back into the rules here. So this is what I mean about this being a book that you're going to want to really savor. And I'm not the kind of guy who likes to savor a rule book. I like to be able to pick up a rule book and understand what I'm reading and throw down something on the table and have fun quite quickly. That said, I have enjoyed savouring this rulebook. It is well written. Ken writes, other than that one thing about exactly how the initiative thing works, which is like one page. This is a beautifully written book. And other than that one thing, everything else is very well explained. And I could really start to see how the synergies were going to come out. How you would read through it and you'd start to go, oh yeah, I can see that, command radius is really important, and you get these booster units, so you can have units that boost your command radius. So if the booster unit is within your command radius is now extended by an amount equal to the effectiveness of the booster unit, or double, I think, the effectiveness of the booster unit. And that could be a really big deal. That allows you to dispatch units from your command group to do stuff with confidence that you can get them back again. And there's a mechanic whereby if they're outside your command radius, what they do is they repeat the order that they had the previous turn. And sometimes that's all you want. So if you've got a unit that's got something to do, and you need them to do it over several turns, you can just leave them to do it. You don't have to worry that they're not in your command radius. You can let them get on with it. Then there are elite units, and elite units don't belong to a battle group in the same way. They operate independently. They activate on their own. And then there are EMP devices in here, and there are tactical nukes, and there are all kinds of different weapons. And it's all the kind of stuff that I remember when I first released Horizon Wars. Those who didn't like Horizon Wars, of which there were plenty of people, the big thing that they complained about was that there just wasn't enough to get their teeth into. Well, if Horizon Wars was an entree, this is a 6-course meal. There is more than enough to get your teeth into here. Whether you ever manage to get up from the table and actually play the game is another question. But if you love to browse a book and sit up with a book and enjoy reading through a set of rules to understand what the author intended without them needing to spell everything out, this is a really interesting and entertaining read. I have two main criticisms of Polyversal. The first is that actually getting it onto the table is going to be hard work. Either you're going to have to do the whole craft thing and print out and sticky your hexes, or even if you don't want to print out the hexes that come with, you've got to make your own hexes. Not everybody's up for that. And there isn't really any alternative. It's not like you can really make the game work without using the hexes. It just doesn't. Anything that you could do that would avoid the hexes would make it no longer polyversal. It wouldn't work the same way. And I think that's a... Yeah, I thought it was a weakness when I first saw Polyversal. It was distinctive, it was innovative, it was characteristic of the game, but it just felt like a lot of work. So that's a downside. If you're up for doing the hard work, if you love the game enough, you'll be motivated to do that work. But it's a level of friction that I think works against the game getting on the table. The other thing is, once you've done the hexes and you've got the counters down on your control console, you've got to do a lot of work remembering that that unit over there is that hex down there that's got these conditions and this stress and this effectiveness, to keep going backwards and forwards between the two. This game feels to me like it's ahead of its time. That this game would work best in an era that I don't think is a very long way away from here, where we've got a mature culture of augmented reality games, where your battle group could be a virtual projection on the table. So you've got your miniatures, but your hexes could be a virtual projection on the tabletop, where the status conditions could be displayed as little graphical things that could just look like counters, or they could be actually little animated graphics that you would see through your augmented reality headset or visor or whatever you're using. You know, I could see it being really, really well supported by that kind of technology. Whereas right now, it feels like you're asking your players to get a little bit primary school to be able to play. Yep. Okay, that's Polyversal, and that's 45 minutes, which is good. That's about the right amount of time I wanted to spend talking about it. Any questions I can see in the comments? I've got no more questions about the game. That's fab. I shall put that to one side. So there was something else I wanted to do today, and I'll be honest, I don't have to do this. I want to do it. This is just an opportunity for you guys to do some stuff. So I'm just going to move a little bit, and then you'll join me in a moment. Okay? So just work with me. I'm going to see the mess of my office here. Oops. Get to the outside the window. Okay. Right. Ignore the laptop. You don't want the feedback. Right. Okay. Because what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to do that a little bit different. There we go. I want to do an unboxing. And I want to unbox. I have never played Star Wars Legion. I'm struggling to get this in the right angle for you. Sorry. There we go. Okay, I've never played Star Wars Legion. I don't know the rules. I love Star Wars. I love these miniatures, and I wanted to buy and own some for a variety of reasons. The main one being that I am doing a thing on the Patreon which is called Zero Dark Distant Galaxy, and it's basically a mod to put Zero Dark into a setting that is a little bit more familiar for those of us that enjoy a galaxy far, far away. And I wanted to start adding some photography to that, so I went and bought some Star Wars Legion minis, and I agonised over what my first set was going to be, and I went in for this box of Imperial Death Troopers. I've never seen these minis in real life. I've seen very little Star Wars Legion stuff that wasn't already built and painted, so this is going to be an interesting experience for me. I know little about the quality, detail, appearance of these, except reviews that I've read online. First things first, I think it's mad that this stuff is shrink wrapped. I see absolutely no reason why companies should be producing this amount of single-use plastic in this day and age. There is no reason why this couldn't be shipped as a cardboard box with plastic seals, or even better, with paper seals on the end to stop people opening it up. It's a complete waste of resources to be wrapping it in plastic. Admittedly, they're plastic miniatures. I know that. I'm not going to say that my opinion is logical. Right, okay. Next thing, look at the size of this box. Look at the size of the contents. What the heck? I mean, this is the Lay's chips of boxing. I mean, flipping FFG have always been bad at this. X-Wing is just as bad at this, and Imperial Assault was just as bad as this. This stuff does not need this box. The only reason they put it in a box this size is because they put a £25 price sticker on it, and they think that people won't think it's worth it if it's only as big as it needs to be to contain their stuff. That's flipping disgusting. So FFG loses many points with me. I love Star Wars. I love the look of what I'm seeing, but that's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Okay, going to components list, got a little bit of instructions on how to put stuff together. Some new rules, great. Well, I'm not that interested in the game. It's got counters, got cards. I mean, this is FFG. They're incapable of making a game that doesn't involve ludicrous amounts of cardboard. More pointless plastic. I will reuse this. By the way, if you buy stuff from me
odds are you'll end up with one of these plastic bags with your products in it, because I try and reuse plastic as often as I can. Yeah, it's a thing about using the Death Troopers. In Star Wars Legion, these are cards for stuff that Star Wars Legion things can do. I know nothing about them. Anybody's into Star Wars Legion and would like these cards, let me know, because I don't want them. You can have them, otherwise they will go in the bin. Right, counters. I mean, I always like a counter. These are at least nicely generic. I could use counters like these for all kinds of things, from objectives to bennies and stuff in roleplay games. So I don't mind counters. Card counters are good. Happy with counters. Right, let's have a look at these minis. Okay, number one. I'm surprised. I was expecting a sprue. I was expecting a sprue, and I was expecting hard styrene plastic. That's not what I'm getting here. That is not what I'm getting here at all. I am taken aback. Yeah, Dale, you're welcome to have the cards. They're useful to you. You're not getting the minis. I am taken aback by this. This isn't hard styrene. This is board game plastic. This is the stuff that Privateer Press was using before they realised that it was killing their business model, and they went back to metal like proper miniatures. I mean, the detail is great. Let's bring this up to the camera a bit. Okay, you know, these are well cast, and look, that's the head, and it's got a socket, so it tells you exactly how to fit it on, so there's no chance of you mispositioning it. And we've got arms do the same thing. I imagine he's like that. What we got? We got a rifle which is going to stick on him somewhere. Where's his? Is that his? Oh, I see. He's got a hand. Right. Okay. So there's a hand on the pistol, and this is the other part of the arm which goes on there. So I mean, this is the assembly of it reminds me of the white metal miniatures from Corvus Belli. You know, they've got that kind of intelligent layout. See, come a bit closer and you can see what I'm looking at there. It's got an intelligent layout, but this material is I'm shocked. I'm shocked and surprised. Is it bad though? I mean, that's what I've got to be open-minded about. Is it actually bad that it's this material? Well, in terms of producing a good-looking miniature, no, it's not bad. This casting is good. I see almost no mould lines, very, very faint mould lines, just running down the side of this armour plate. The mould lines is a little bit on that shin plate. It's very faint. I think you could paint this without needing to do any prep, and nobody would notice. At a tabletop level, they definitely wouldn't notice. At a competition level, they might, but easily they could overlook it. The mould lines are well placed as well. They're well designed. You know, somebody intelligent who understands how molds work has made these. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised at that. FFG have been making these for a while. So why am I complaining? Why am I complaining? Well, the main reason I was complaining is that I have every intention of converting the hell out of these miniatures. I've got some spare heads and some spare parts. I've got some Eisenkern bits. I've got some lovely white metal heads from Statuesque Miniatures that have been looking for a home, and these guys are going to be great for it. Is this guy the same? I'm not going to open that if he's the same one. Oh no, okay, oh that's interesting. Is that? Oh no, it's not the same body. It's a very similar body, but it's ever so slightly different. It's got different equipment. But that arm's off and that right. Okay. And obviously, you know, these are Death Troopers, so I'm not expecting them to be hugely different from one another. And part of the reason I got these guys is so that I could convert them and actually make them different from one another, make them different and original. I'm going to have to do a lot of hacking on these to convert them, because this stuff is it's resistant in a way that your standard styrene, hard styrene plastic isn't. See, that's some very sophisticated casting, actually. If you look, don't know how closely you can see that. I'm looking for a pen or something I can point out, but in here, you know, there's a teeny tiny gap between the top of his shoulder pad and the start of his upper arm armour. And for a second I thought, oh, that's been cast in two pieces and glued together. It's so differentiated. But it isn't. That's some very high quality casting to get that level of detail, that level of undercut in there. That's quite impressive. That is quite impressive. I will grant you that, Fantasy Flight Games. There you go, I'll just push this one together. I'm not sure about his pose. Looks kind of awkward. But hey, okay, that's... you guys probably don't need to see the others. I got two more. There are 6 guys in the box, which is why I got this set. I thought 6 miniatures for £25. Didn't feel dreadful. This one's kneeling, which is interesting. Are these two the same? No, they're not the same either. So each miniature is individual. They are all unique sculpts, which is good. I like that. I respect that. Well done, FFG. The quality of the casting is outstanding. The planning of the mould layout is as good as I have ever seen. The application of this plastics technology has come on in leaps and bounds in recent years. So, you know, I'm not surprised to see that the quality that we're getting here is vastly better than what Privateer Press were getting when they started using it with their grind board game years ago, and then they moved the rest of their stuff into the same material before the outcry forced them back to white metal where they belonged. Let's have a look at the bases. Quick look at the bases. These feel like hard styrene. They do feel like, these are not the same stuff. Okay, so these are hard styrene bases. What is their size? Hold on a bit. What actual size are these bases? These are wrong end, sorry. They're 25mm bases. Just about. Yeah, they're 25. They're 25mm on the top measurement. They're a bit bigger than that on the bottom. They're like 27mm on the bottom of the base. Wow. I mean, I assume these mechanics of this game have a, you know, base-to-base thing. Dale's there, so he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, I am. Thanks. So Paul has posted on a link to the Eisenkern at War Games Atlantic. The Eisenkern are awesome. I have some of the original Eisenkern. I got a whole bunch of bits from the original Eisenkern release. They're a teeny tiny bit differently proportioned to the new ones. The new ones, in my opinion, are better. I was always a bit wobbly about the proportions on the old ones, so that's cool. What size underneath repair washer waiting? Lots of room for a washer. My washers are all in a box on the other side of the room, so I won't keep you there, but the size underneath is 22, yeah, I'd say a 22mm washer will suit you very nicely, and they're an 11mm if it's a radius thing. Okay, so 22mm diameter washer would do very nicely underneath these bases. I may or may not use these bases because, seriously, 27mm? Fantasy Flight? Why do you always have to be different, Fantasy Flight Games? Why have you always got to be different? Is that because Games Workshop started doing it? Dicks. Right, okay. That's all I had to say about that today. I did have some other stuff to look at if that took me less than an hour, but I'm not going to do that. Knocking stuff over in the background. It's alright, it's just building material. So I'm not going to do that because it is 3 o'clock, which means it's time for me to go. So thank you very much for coming to the Friday live stream. This was popular. People obviously like the looks through the books. I have another book coming, which I will be looking through in the future. Have you heard of 5 Parsecs from Home? This is a fab little sci-fi solo game written by Ivan Sorensen of Nordic Weasel game. Ivan is a huge
figure in indie gaming. And when I released Zero Dark, he very, very sweetly reached out without any prompting to congratulate me, and he emailed me just the other day to say congratulations on Infinite Dark. So he is awesome. And Modifius Entertainment recently have republished, or sort of published, a new edition of 5 Parsecs. It's a purely solo game, and I will be receiving my copy at some point. I've ordered it from Modifius, so I expect it in the next week or so. And hopefully it'll feature in next week's live stream. And that is a game that I will put on the table before I talk to you about it, because it's supposed to be that kind of game. Right, that's it. It's well past 3 o'clock, so I'll let you guys go. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you all next week.